Good morning, friends. This is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video, before I get into the purpose of today's video, which is Mascha's top tarot trumps, and today we're on the Chariot. I saw she dropped that video either last night or this morning. I do want to make a few general announcements because some of you, I've made you aware that I will be receiving Marco's Etteilla deck soon, right? He sent me, this is how quick Marco is for those of you who are nervous about, ordering something from overseas. Marco is in Italy. I think he's in Rome. He sent me the tracking number on Tuesday, which means he mailed it on Tuesday, right? It's Thursday. I know from watching my mail, it's coming today. So today's only Thursday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. How do you beat that? It's 3 days. Now, the only problem with me doing a video on it today is that today, my mail always comes pretty late in the day. So it comes by the time the sun is starting to get dark. But it is staying darker later. So there's a chance I'll be able to do the Marco showcasing of the Etteilla deck this evening. I hope so, because tomorrow is Friday. I have my grandson all day. And the first opportunity after tonight will be on Saturday. So hopefully I'll be able to get the showcasing in tonight. Hopefully I'll have enough light. The second thing I want to mention is that I dropped in my community section that the Trzes Mamluk deck is going through a second publication, which some of you are very, very happy to hear. Not too long ago, I featured the Ian Comste's Mamluk deck, and I made reference to, and I've done videos on this deck in the past. This one is Trzes Mamluk. Hopefully it shows up in properly. Trzes Mamluk deck. This is an outstanding deck. It's out of print. The reason I'm mentioning it is because I found out that this deck is going for a second publication beginning in May. I think May 8th. So if you go to Facebook and type in TRZES art, you'll find the person responsible for creating this deck, and you'll be able to know all the updates for yourself. But that deck will be made available in a second edition, so that's great news. It's funny, I just showcased it not too long ago. I just showcased, the Ian Comste one, and as I mentioned, I've done videos on the Trzes. I don't know if I'm saying it properly, so please forgive me. I did, at least one video on Trzes. So if you want to go through my playlist and try to find it, if I think of it, I'll put the link down below. Okay, but today's case in point, the point of today's video is Mascha's top tarot trumps, and today we're focused on the Chariot. Now, I didn't have to really think too hard about it. I decided that I really wanted to go with the earliest occasions of the Chariot in both the Italian decks and the French decks. I'm going to flip the camera and you'll see the decks I've chosen. When possible, I try to choose my, selections from some of my favorite tarot publishers. And so here we have the Roland Tarot of Marseille by Marco Benedetti. We have what is commonly known as the Charles VI Tarot by Marco Benedetti. And then we have Il Meneghello Tarot Visconti Sforza, also known as, I have cheat sheets here, the Pierpont Morgan Tarot. The Visconti Madrone, also known as the Chariot by Lo Scarabeo. And then I have Jean Dodal by our friends over at Artisan Tarot. Now, not in any particular order, although probably I'm going to introduce them in my favorite order. We have the Charles VI Tarot, this one published by Marco Benedetti. And, the Charles VI is probably the earliest of all these decks, or at least in keeping in time with with the Visconti decks. I love this because it's an Italian deck, and I've never heard it discussed anywhere else, and I've mentioned it in other videos that I've done. But you'll notice there's the bunting here, right, on the canopy. Now the canopy is not like in the Dodal from 1710. We see a scalloped edge in the top of the canopy of the Chariot in the 1710 Dodal. This one published by Artisan Tarot. But here in an Italian deck, probably in the early to mid 1400s, we see evidence of a scalloped canopy, or the scalloped edge, not hanging as a canopy over the warrior. He does appear to be a warrior because he's holding a weapon. He might not be a prince, as is suggested by the crown in the Dodal of 1710, but he does seem to be someone who is being heralded as a hero. But we see the canopy here, which I think is really interesting. And somehow it translated into TdM1. Now this TdM1 is from 1710, as I mentioned. The Charles VI is early to mid 1400s. We see two white horses looking in opposite directions. Where have we seen that before? And remember, this is an Italian deck, which definitely precedes the French TdMs by maybe 200 years. Now in the Dodal, we have two gray horses and they're glancing at one another. Let's take a look at the Rolichan, which is a TdM. Again, we have the scalloped edge. Here, as in the Dodal, we have a prince because he's wearing a crown. He's got the moon epaulets on his shoulders, right? He's got his sword or his spear, whatever that is. But we have two white horses, as we did in the Charles VI, and here they're looking at one another as they are in the Dodal. But here it's white. Now, the interesting thing about the Rolichan Tarot, which I've showcased in the past, and if you want to find it, just look for the Rolichan Tarot, and if mine pops up, that's the one to watch. According to Cheryl Smith's historic page on tarot, which is called Tarot Heritage, which I encourage all of you to look up, and especially if you're looking up a historic tarot deck, go check out Cheryl Smith's articles, because chances are good if it's a historic tarot deck, she's got it, she's got it mentioned. Now, according to her website, she believes that the Rolichan is possibly the earliest, one of the earliest TdMs that exists, because the Rolichan family was known to be, collective card makers from 1570 to 1670. So if this was made anytime prior to 1670, if it was made anywhere between the 1570 and say the early 1600s or even the mid 1600s, that would make this one of the earliest TdMs out there, right? So I think it's kind of interesting, just for that reason alone, that we may have here one of the very earliest TdM ones. Now I know there's one that was believed recently to have been created in the 1630s, and every time I do a video, the name escapes me. But some of you who I'm sure remember the name, drop it down below in comments if you don't mind, for other people who might be interested in knowing. And then, of course, the Noble, which we date around 1650. But this, at the latest, would be contemporary to the Noble, certainly long before the Dodal, and possibly much earlier than the Noble. But I think it's interesting that, the Italian deck has the scalloped edge and two white horses with a victor. We see that he's got a weapon. So he's somebody, he's probably somebody belonging to the noble family, the Estensi family perhaps, who accomplished something of greatness. These were personal decks. This deck was created for a family, right? It wasn't a mass-produced deck as these other decks might have been. So they would have been pushing the attributes of one of their own as a victor in some, probably if we looked it up, there's probably some wonderful thing that they accomplished in battle. The other decks that I have here is the Visconti Sforza, put out by, this one is the Madrone, also known as the Chariot. This one was published by Lo Scarabeo, and some of you have a problem with it because you don't like the shininess, but I love this deck. I truly love this deck, and you'll notice that in the Visconti decks, and here we have another Visconti deck, this one by Il Meneghello, also known as the Pierpont Morgan Tarot, you'll notice that these victors, or these virtuous individuals, are women. Not him, but her, right? So, and again, these decks were created for a particular family. Now, if they were created for a wedding, to commemorate a wedding, it might be suggested that the bride is being depicted in the Chariot card to indicate that she has many virtues. Now, I don't see scalloped edges here. It's rather hard because it's gold on gold. But we don't see scalloped edges here, but we do see white horses. So the white horses may have well indeed translated to French, Oh, well, excuse me, this one is also Italian. But, I'm trying to say that, we see that the Italian decks, the white horses, and in this case, the scalloped edge, just may have translated to the French decks. I love looking at tarot decks and just seeing if you can find characteristics that connect one deck to a later deck. But we have the women here being heralded for their virtues, I'm sure. This one has if I had done my homework better, I would know who these individuals are, but I didn't go through all that trouble, so please forgive me. Here, she appears to have a dove. And here she appears to have, what is that? An orb? I'm not sure what is depicted on there. I'm not really sure. I guess I can pause and look it up in the book, so let me do that. But I like looking at the earliest cards, in some cases, of the Triumph cards, because we get a sense of their origin story. And I think there's no doubt that the Chariot, whether it's a woman and they're trying to depict her virtues, or if it's a warrior in a family or something, a male member of a family who did something great, or just the concept of a hero in general. I think there's no getting around the fact that the Chariot, in its earliest forms, depicts virtue or success or the accomplishments, right? Which translates into, the meaning you can give the card in a reading, an accomplished individual. Now, it's true. It all depends on the context of a question. If, for example, we're doing a reading and we want to know if we'll be successful in getting a job, we have applied for a position, and if the Chariot pops up, then I would say, yeah, you have a really good chance of accomplishing that goal. It depends on what some of the other cards might be. If it's ill-suited because there are some conflicting cards, it may suggest that the better person or the more qualified person might get the job. But if that isn't an indication and you're just really asking about yourself, then there's a good chance if this pops up that you'll get the job. What if we're talking about somebody who's missing, right? And the Chariot pops up. It could be an indicator that, he or she was moved by car, that at some stage somebody would, pick them up by car. It could also, be an indicator of having car trouble, that you're going to have car trouble. If the context of the question allows for the suggestion of car trouble. So there are multiple ways to understand this and just about every other tarot card there is. But in its purest sense, it suggests the virtues of, or the accomplishments of, or someone who is successful in something. And even think about, if you want to check out my playlist on numerology, when I get into the discussion of the Chariot, you just think of modern day, when our biggest politicians who we, or when astronauts, would be paraded, or Lindbergh, for example, they were all in cars. When we have parades, even Santa Claus is in a chariot of sorts, right? He's on a fire truck, right? And our unfortunately, I guess ever since JFK was assassinated in his convertible, we had politicians who we considered heroes, right? In chariots, open carriages, and sports. I mean, when your own sports team, wins the biggest prize in whatever category they're in, they come through on a big kind of vehicle, and they're all hanging out in an open carriage, right? So we tend to display our heroes in an open carriage. And I think that's, I chose these cards because I think they clearly portray that sentiment. Okay, friends, now bear in mind, as I mentioned, if you want to find out more about the Trzes deck, TRZES art over on Facebook, that'll keep you up to date. And Marco's Etteilla deck is arriving today, and I will do my absolute best to do the video this evening when I get home. I'll work around my schedule. I'll do it at 3 a.m. if I have the proper light. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind, and do no harm.